Today I'm going to be reading in Genesis, and this particular section touches on God's original design for men and what that means for men. In Genesis chapter 1, it starts out with God speaking the word into life. He speaks the heavens, he speaks the light, all the animals of the ground, all the creatures of the sea, all of the birds of the sky, he speaks into existence. For example, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 6, it says, "And then God said, let there be an expanse between the waters, separating the water from water. So God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above the expanse, and it was so. God called this expanse the sky." He speaks it into being. And then we travel down a few verses after creations and several days. We see that God then. So what's different about this type of creation? Because there's an extreme difference right here in Genesis chapter 1 about how God actually makes man. Right? He didn't speak into existence man. And we see this a little bit more in chapter 2. In chapter 2, starting at verse 4, "These are the records of the heavens and the earth concerning their creation at the time, that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. No shrub of the field had yet grown on the land, and no plants of the field had yet sprouted, for the Lord had not made it rain on the land, and there was no man to work the ground. But water would come out of the ground, and water the entire surface of the land. Then the Lord God formed the man out of dust from the ground, and breathed life into his nostrils, and man became a living being." So there's a key word here, formed. God formed man, and this term is rich in depth and meaning. God handmade man by sculpting him from what he had already created. Formed means to fashion or shape or forge, usually by plan or design. It wasn't something that was just haphazardly done. It was done with intention. To form is to devise, prepare, or think about future actions in particular with a particular plan of action as an extension of forming this artistic object by design. God isn't a mad scientist, unknowingly experimenting with creations to see what he could come up with. He's thoughtful and careful in what he does. He doesn't make mistakes. He had an intentional aspect to our creation that would actually tie into his dominion. So why did God create men? Man was to function like a mirror, something to reflect the image of God into creation. Humanity, made in the image of God, was created to be an earthly representation of who God is. In man's God-given dominion and rule over creation, he was to display the ultimate rule of God in his limited dominion. So our dominion is the earth, the heavens and the earth, the birds, and we have a type of holiness about us. It's our godly aspect in that we are, in sense that we are a mirror of God, right? In His likeness. When it says let us make men in our likeness, since God is a formless spiritual being, He doesn't actually look like us. But what He does do is He forms our likeness to Him, our spiritual likeness, our inner spiritual being, to be like Him. So then, as an image bearer, man was to reflect God's heavenly design and heavenly reign on earth, and represent God's virtue by being His image. So for this incredible responsibility, he's giving us a command in the Bible to subdue the earth, right? To bring essentially the way that they mean this verb, right? The way it's written is to bring under one's control for one's advantage. So he wants us to have dominion over the earth. He wants us to he wanted us to essentially subdue the animals for our benefit, but not in an iron fist clad kind of way where we have this authoritarian style rule, because that's not what God is. That's not what his plan was for men. His plan for men was, or man in this instance, for both women and men, is to show his likeness through us. And God doesn't rule with an iron fist. He's not an authoritarian type ruler. He immediately goes to putting man to work. He starts by giving Adam a task in the garden, which is to work the land of the garden itself, and to essentially and his first task is to name all of the animals, and this was Adam exerting his dominion over what God has created. So in this instance, we find that men have a certain set of responsibilities from God in our creation. We are designed to do something, right? And in today's world, a lot of men want to do nothing. They don't want to go out and subdue the world and bring it under their dominion for their own benefit. They aren't doing anything. They become locked in that land of sin that Adam falls into after they partake of the fruit of good and evil. After Adam partakes of the fruit, it's not like they didn't know about certain types of things beforehand. They certainly had a certain wealth of knowledge beforehand, but what entered in through him was sin, and that sin leads to other things like idolatry, laziness, other sins that aren't exactly what God intended for us to do. We're intended to do something, and in doing something, we show our likeness to God. So, what is this something? We already have that. There's responsibility of men to do something, right?